If we're recording in progress. Hello, everyone. My name is Jay Brewster. My pronouns are he, him. I will be your MC to kick this off. I work for Shaw Communications. If you've been following the news for the last 2 years, I think I'm now Rogers. We're still waiting to have meetings to find out what that means. I am the program manager of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging at Shaw Communications. And just because of what we're speaking today about uncovering at work, I'm going to be a little bit transparent with all of you. I am a queer cisgender man, and I have a disability. So my invisible disability is dyslexia. So today I'll be reading out some bios. And if you know anything about dyslexia, I'm extremely anxious right now. I will try not to butcher the people who will be introducing. But before we get started, I want to start with a land acknowledgement. So I'd like to begin by introducing my background as a settler. I'm of English descent. My family are originally from Rutland, England, and I am the 4th generation a guest on these lands. We are currently situated on Treaty 7, where the Bow River meets Sable, and that is the traditional Black-White name is Wokintis, which we now call the city of Calgary. I thank and honor the Indigenous people of the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Tsuut'ina, the Nakota Nations, and the Métis Region 3 for welcoming us on these lands. I do a land acknowledgement because acknowledging the land is an Indigenous protocol used to express gratitude to those who reside here and to honor the Indigenous people who have lived, worked on this land historically and presently today. It allows us the opportunity to appreciate the unique role and relationship that each of us has with the land and provides us a gentle reminder of broader aspects that expand our understanding of the long, rich history of the land and our privileged role in residing here. From the waters to the north, to the west, and the east, I acknowledge the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nation peoples who are the original stewards of these sacred lands. Whether you're tuning in here virtually or you're here in person, I encourage you to find out about the lands that you reside on, and I challenge you, if you have not yet, work on your land acknowledgement to recognize the Indigenous people of those lands that you reside on. So thank you. All right, so a few housekeeping things just so that people know. We do have washrooms, so if you need to go, if you head out the door and to the left, and I guess it'd be my left, your right, down the hall, there are some general neutral washrooms there. Please feel free to use those throughout the evening. Also, if there is anyone here that wants a little bit more space, you're maybe not feeling so close to your neighbors, there is an overflow room where the video camera is all set up. It's just down towards the washrooms. If you need more space, you're welcome to use that space as well. There will be food and beverage after, so hopefully you'll stick around and stay for that. All right, I think that's good for the housekeeping. There will be scanned for live transcripts, apparently there, you can do that. There's also closed caption available online if you need that as well. All right, I would like to introduce to you Dividing Thunder. She is our elder here today. And I have a little bit of a bio that I want to read first. He's grateful for the rewarding experience and the insight sharing Blackfoot's cultural knowledge to others to enhance understanding and community harmony. Sharing with others is one of the Native core values, and as a youth, he began to acknowledge the ways of his Blackfoot beliefs and values from his elders elderly relatives. His family has always been and is part of the Sundance ceremony and the Kainai Nation. And in the 1990s, he did his 4-year vow as a piercing Sundancer at the Morris Crow Sundance, where he now earns the rights as a pipe carrier and a sweat lodge keeper. Talking with elders has been a better understanding of himself as a two-spirit person. And with this knowledge, he has been honored to share with others in understanding and acknowledging their two-spirit unique community. Within the 25 years, he has been honored to support with presentations, pipe ceremonies, talking circles, sweat lodge ceremonies for organizations like Calgary Wood Homes, Nice Children's Services, Montana Two-Spirit Society, annual gatherings, the Calgary Two-Spirit Society, the Edmonton Two-Spirit Society, Kainai Two-Spirit Support Group, including the Kainai Healing Lodge, which is an addiction treatment center for sexuality in Calgary with the youth camp, Blood Tribe Social Services, Life Skills Program, the Lethbridge Correctional Center, and the Lethbridge Big Man 5th on 5th Community Services. Tons of work there. Thank you for having us. And I have a bit of a tobacco offering for you that I'd like to offer you, and thank you.
Okay, it's hello, and it's a nice day today. My name is Aiki Takomi. That's Divine Thunder. That was my grandmother's name. I was given, and I'm from Ghana, from the southern Alberta, and I've been doing community help in my for the Two-Spirit people. And one thing that I have found out from the elders, because that is something that they didn't really talk about too much, because elders are very modest and there's just some things they don't really talk about. But anyways, it was in the one traditional families program that I was in with Kainai Studies at the Rico College. And Bruce Wolfchild was the one that said that we call Blackfoot Two-Spirit person, we call them Awawaki. And with that, I was able to inform other people, like the ones that are going to Montana, the Blackfeet tribe down there, and other tribes that come there every year. And so they use that name now down there, and also up here in Calgary now, that name is being used, the right word is being used for Blackfoot. It's Awawaki, not Awakifkasui or Anaskasui. That means they are, it's kind of acting like a woman or acting like a man. Those are not good words to use. But with the Catholic Church, they that was put down being that way, and but now, it has been part of our culture way back because we have that name. The other name, in Sipatsimo, that's man-hearted woman, and that's for the female. And so we have these names, so they are part of our culture. And just like the other tribes throughout North America, they have their spirit names in their language. But anyways, I'd like to say a prayer here. I guess we can't like this much, but I do have my smudge rock here. And before I came into the building, that I already smudged, and I smudged my drum here. I'll sing a song at the end. And so these are songs that come from the spirits through dreams, and so they're sacred songs, and they help us. And we even got a dream from a man from the Osage tribe, and it's with the Two-Spirit coming back into the community and he shared that song with other people, and he shared that with me, and he told me that I could translate it into Blackfoot, and so I done that, and I sing that song. It's a sacred song because it came through a dream. And so I'll say a prayer right now. One of my elders, I've done Margaret Hyman from my reserve. She says our language in the Biscu, that means it has a spirit in it. So that when you say your prayer, when you pray, it's best to pray in your own language. It strengthens your prayer and whoever you're praying for. And so I'll also pray this in Blackfoot. And so higher Latin sales party, I accept your economics to restore your priorities to me. In what you said to Penana, there's what's the Bimotio, Penanaki, Motio, Penan. See, Naki works, so that works up and down to Jan see my station, study it for its good use in an sacro. I get him what's he open and I'll get you stocks in a get in an animal. Sacro meat to be cancer, meat that meat to be spent with see that meat to be. I get beats in banana, get the wax open and bad beats in and get stocks in my place and two comments down with the gun. I am marking it your book and some comics and some things. In the street, we are king. In my son, our walking street. And much into one can approach in back to be city. Smokita, he got in a team to back to city, a comics, and the watch and the come down. So at the end of this prayer, usually I would like to say that the other elders do we say is the what that means that we are prosperous, and agamatani that means that we overcome things. There's always obstacles in life, but that we overcome them. And when you say this at the end all the time, then it strengthens what you're praying for and it helps. And but I pray for all the different nationalities and that we take care of Mother Earth, the water, this above things that are, like the planets and the air breathing and stuff like that. Okay? So, and then we have better understanding of one another. And it's good that we come here tonight right now to build that connection in a good way. And
Thank you so much, Elder. Divine Thunder. So I just want to take this opportunity to introduce our hosts for the evening. So we will go ahead and thank Norton Rose Fulbright, and we have with us Brian Milne. And Brian Milne is a partner in practices, taxes, and charity law. Okay.
So yeah, welcome everyone. Have you
Take my seat just so you're on camera.
because they want to grab my paper so I forget what I'm gonna say. You go. So yeah, as I was saying, I want to welcome everyone on behalf of Norton Rose Fulbright back to our offices this evening. And welcome back for anyone who happened to be here in 2019 or prior years. It's good to see people back in the lounge. And hopefully I'll have a chance to chat after your reception. Also, thanks to Credit Works for organizing this and coming back to our offices, I should say as well. So with this evening's topic of uncovering at work, I just want to share a few details on our own diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives on the basis that I think there's a lot we can learn from each other because of what organizations are doing. Certainly at our firm, we can learn from other businesses, what they're doing, and maybe we can reciprocate that. So in the nearly 15 years that I've been at NRF, I've seen a significant increase in our focus, generally, but certainly within the firm, focus on diversity, acceptance of it as being part of life at the firm and the importance of it. And today, that's grown into having 6 different ERGs, set up as grassroots employee-led groups, supporting our strategy. They include the Pride Network, of which I'm a member, which focuses on our US LGBTQI plus efforts. We have a women's Norton Rose Fulbright, or the WIN ERG. We have a Origins ERG that we set up, which supports our Black and other racialized colleagues here across our offices. We have a mental health network for those that want to participate in that. We have an Indigenous relations network, and we've also, I think, more recently added a novel diversity book club, focusing specifically on diversity issues, which has proven to be a lot of fun. So some of the things that I and others at the firm here are most proud of in terms of Norton Rose Fulbright's participation in these initiatives, and this may just kind of tooting our own horn a little bit, but I am proud of these things. So being the first Canadian firm to publish diversity data, so we collect and share student demographic data. We're the only firm to conduct blind first round evaluation for partner promotions, so removing issues that shouldn't relate to partner status from that process. And we created a specific standalone position to ensure diversity in our practice and on our teams, which was the first in Canada. Specifically dealing with the US LGBTQIA that we have, that's been established and recently celebrated its 10-year anniversary in our firm. So again, those 10 years, it's pretty remarkable to where we are today versus where we are back then. The common expression stands, like obviously says, there's more work to be done, but I think we can be very proud of what we have done. Marching in the Pride Parade annually, and being the first firm in Calgary to have done that, partnering with grassroots organizations in town like the Calgary Queer Arts Society and others, building our own policies to support our team members and provide resources, and of course, our mainland Pride at work and hosting events like these. So, I mean, all that to say is we're doing what we can, there's work to be done, and we're going to be trying to do that. Anyone wants to chat later on about, again, things that we are doing or share things that you're doing that we can learn from, happy to chat. And the one is with that, I'll pass it over to Jay for the event. And again, once again, thanks for coming.
Perfect, thank you. All right. So how this will sort of flow, just so people know the agenda, we will be introducing Dave, who will be our moderator. There will be some questions for our panelists that they will direct them to. There'll be some Q&A at the end. So if you have some questions, whether you're putting those into chat or whether you're going to put up your hand, there will be a time for that at the end. And then we'll be closing with Elder Dividing Thunder and some great refreshments and food at the end. So for those of you that don't know Jade, and I think most people here virtually know who Jade is, he is an inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility professional based in Toronto, and currently serves as the director of programs at Pride at Work Canada, where they work with over 250 large employer organizations across Canada, and focus on things like gender expression, gender identity, sexual orientation, inclusion. And Jade previously served as a volunteer and community outreach coordinator at the Archives. Thank you. And the educational program coordinator at Kind Space, and also independent inclusion consultant. They are one of the authors of Transitioning Employers, a survey of policy and practices for trans inclusive workplaces. If you haven't read that, please read it. Also check out their Uncovering Belonging podcast that's available. Jade has been named one of Future Good's 2022 Young Impact Leaders and Toronto Metropolitan University 2021 Pride Champions. And then it goes on to say in their spare time, I'm not sure whether they have spare time, but in their spare time, they can be found geeking out over queer and trans Norse histories, disability justice, interfaith advocacy, fire keeping, and spending time with their chosen family. Here's Jane.
Thank you, Greg, for that warm introduction, as well as thank you to Norton Rose Fulbright for hosting us tonight. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you to Elder Dwight and Thunder for opening us in a good way. As somebody who doesn't live on this territory, I'm very conscious of the fact that I'm coming from Treaty 13 territory. So I'm within the thought of the credit where I live, work, and play. But I'm grateful to be here and to be with all of you. But today isn't about me. Today is about our amazing panelists. So I'm very excited to introduce them today. So first off, we have Gregory, who is a proud Métis business leader who brings passion and determination to everything he does. He's a passionate advocate for Indigenous inclusion in both energy and technology sectors, and is a regular guest speaker and lecturer, panelist, and contributor to discussions about the future of business in Canada. He's the father of two companies, Fortis Business Development and Unimate Technologies, whose purpose is to build, share Indigitech across Turtle Island. Greg was recognized with a 2020 JWN Energy Rising Star Award, where he was celebrated for his career contributions to the Canadian energy sector. In 2021, he was honored to be named as a finalist for both the Global Energy Show Emerging Leader Award and the Canadian Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce Business Advocate of the Year. He sits on the IoT North Conference Executive Steering Committee and the 2023-2024 Global Energy Show Executive Steering Committee, and is always excited to elevate and maintain space for building an inclusive innovation environment in Alberta technology and energy. So welcome, Gregory. I'd also like to welcome Sable Sipatsimo, who's a mother, writer, and storyteller and member of the Talenny Nation in Southern Alberta. She was born and raised in Mohkinstsis and has worked in Indigenous art and culture in the city. Sable is an activist in the Indigenous community, creating awareness for Indigenous, transgender, and transsexual issues. Sable studied English at Calgary and has her MFA in creative writing from the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Her play, Awaki, a Blackfoot word meaning crossing over, is about a transgender woman and was performed for the Rugabu Aboriginal Arts Festival in Edmonton and the Native Earth Performing Arts in Toronto. Sable's focus is on creative writing, and she is working on her first novel. She is the Director of Engagement and Reconciliation at Calgary Arts Development. So welcome, Sable. I'd also like to welcome Brit Nickerson, who is a queer visual artist, advocate, and cultural worker currently living and working in Mohkinstsis, which is colonially known as Calgary. She was born on the traditional unceded territory of the Maliseet people. In both her visual art practice and cultural work, Brit believes in centering the voices of marginalized folks. In 2014, she graduated from the Alberta University of the Arts with a Bachelor in Design. She completed a Master of Fine Arts from Emily Carr University in 2017, and her free time, she enjoys beach volleyball, long walks at the dog park, and playing Dungeons and Dragons. So welcome. So uncovering is a topic that is close to my heart. I mean, I have a podcast with my co-host who apparently was able to come today on the topic. And it is one where we need to have this conversation more in workplaces about how do we uncover, whether we uncover, how much we uncover. And so to start off, I wanted to just describe what uncovering is.
So covering would be the act of all the ways that we subtly or overtly hide parts of ourselves, while uncovering is the removing of those ways in which we hide ourselves. So for each of you, and maybe we'll start with Gregory, while uncovering is the root, so for each of you, what does uncovering at work mean for you?
Sure. So I find that this is an interesting conversation in particular, because as somebody who is gay and Indigenous, sometimes I don't want to be that first at work. I want to be known for, you know, I have a finance degree, I have an education, I have all the things that a cis white man, straight man would be looked at first. You know, sometimes I just want to be, you know, that of value that organizations look to other people for first. And then as I get comfortable in that space, then be able to share the things that you also got with, all of those traditional metrics of what success looks like, or what an educated person, or what a desirable hire looks like at an organization. And I think uncovering is not something that any organization is necessarily entitled to. It's a gift that we get to give. And that gift that we get to give is to individual people. And I think that is how we build an environment of safety that then allows that conversation to go at a broader level, but can also be withdrawn at the same time. And I think it is really about consent when we talk about these conversations about, when I, have that desire to talk about these things, but then sometimes I don't feel comfortable. So, I mean, it is a very fluid thing for me. And I think that needs to be respected, as just because I might have uncovered a part of this, a part of who I am, doesn't mean there's full access to that all the time.
Thank you. Yeah, this idea that uncovering is a gift and is conditional, I think, is a powerful one. Sable, do you want to add to that conversation?
Weird.
I guess for me, I've been working in the city here for over 20 years, and I don't feel like I really had a choice in whether or not I was visible at first or had the choice to do it later. It's I'm very tall, and I'm dark skin, so it's kind of like I've always sort of felt like I have to be just like upfront about who I am. Like as soon as I walk in the door, and that's been positive. I'd say positive mostly, but there has definitely been some negative experiences and discrimination. But for me, I've always found that I prefer to know if a space is going to be negative, so I can just like get out of there sooner. And I really do like look for places to work where I feel like a sense of there's like openness amongst my coworkers. And I mean, so far I feel like I've been lucky. I've been lucky in finding a lot of places here in Calgary, Mohkinstsis, where I feel that I can be open and with people about who I am and where I'm from, and find that acceptance.
So what I'm hearing is that sometimes we don't make that choice of whether we uncover or not. Sometimes it is something that the moment we walk through the door, that's present with us. But also there's power in that, and there's power in knowing if a place is going to be welcoming to you from the get-go. But I think there's definitely a conversation here around this idea of the privilege to cover sometimes, and the fact that that isn't fully a privilege in many ways, but sometimes it can be. So thank you.
Thank you. I definitely come from a unique situation. I work for Calgary Pride, so we run on GST Gate Standard Time there, which means, you know, we lead with Pride, and this is my first role ever where I've been out to my colleagues and I feel comfortable leading my with queerness. So I'm definitely in a very unique situation because my work has uncovered everything we're doing. We're trying to advance for the 2S LGBTQ+ community. And I really get to center my identity at our work. And for me, it's not only about being a queer person, but feeling like I can come as who I am that day. Every day changes for every person. And I know there's that expression like leave your feelings or your identity at the door when you come to work. And I think that that's really harmful. So, you know, some days are better than others. And I want to be honest and open with the people I trust in my workplace that, you know, today, this is really affecting me in different ways than other days. So, and I would say that uniquely the last few months, I've actually started to cover more outside of work. So I'm almost an inverse. We've been experiencing as an organization and as a community, our programming, our communications, just so much vitriol from people. So when I have a meeting with an acquaintance or a friend of a friend or a stranger and they ask me about work, I don't tell them where I work or what I do until I know them a little bit better. You know, the first year I was with Pride, I led with Pride outside and inside of work, and now I just feel sometimes I have to cover myself a little bit because you just never know, and there's just so much increased hate towards our community the past few months. So
yeah, that's something that I'm hearing as I'm traveling the country is that there is kind of this rise of hatred against 2S LGBTQI+ communities. But I also think there's power in being a queer and you know, really owning that and taking that space, which some of us feel the need to do because that is our job, that is our job all the time, and sometimes that is the place where we're able to find ourselves. And so I think there's also the strength of boundaries is what you're kind of talking about of creating space for yourself outside of work because you're showing up so uncovered and there's vulnerability in that. And so that leads me to jump back to Sable. So as a storyteller, you often show your own stories, but you also, as a community investment officer, you help others tell theirs. And so I'm wondering about this power of vulnerability and how does vulnerability shape the telling of stories, and what advice would you have for those who choose to tell their stories?
Well, I think initially when I started studying like in creative writing and learning at the U of C, I felt like in that place there was this push towards telling a sort of a type of story that people are used to. And I didn't really feel like that was a place where I felt free to talk about myself as a transsexual woman, as a gay now woman, and so I did do my bachelor's degree there, but I went looking for somewhere else where I would find that support. And I found that at the BAMP Center, and I found that in Santa Fe, New Mexico at the Institute of American Indian Arts. I feel like I looked for those communities where I could get that support in telling stories. And so I feel like, you know, seeing other people and being around other people who are creative and who are not, who have the same desire to be vulnerable and to tell the stories that are close to their heart, and sort of gives you the courage to do the same and encouraging one another, you know, especially in the writing community and the Indigenous writing community. We're sort of trying to push the boundaries of what were the stories that are told, because for so long, our stories were not able to be told by us. They were told by settlers, and so we're, you know, sort of in this rush to be able to tell who we are and express who we are, and whether it's through novels or plays or poetry, in film and television. And so I feel like I feel really lucky to have been in those spaces with other creative people who were really supportive of me and just, you know, encourage me to not to hide or to cover who I am. Another thing is that I, for the most part, got a lot of support from elders. Like, this is my cousin, by the way.
Of course it is.
From my cousin Talenny, and so I was really lucky to have these elders who were really supportive, because there were elders out there who, influenced by the Indian residential school system, did not support LGBTQ, and were just, I guess, too influenced by that conservative Christian mindset to accept that we were always here and that we always had a role within society, many roles within society. And I was lucky to have parents and family members who were really supportive of me too. So I guess I'm just really lucky that I've had that support, and when I don't have it, I look for it. I look for those communities and those circles where I can get that encouragement to be able to express myself and to be vulnerable, because I think it's so important to do that. I think that's the only way that we can really hear those stories that need to be told.
There's definitely a power in that vulnerability to be able to tell stories, and for others to be able to reflect and see themselves in those stories. And so thank you for sharing that. I'm also hearing the importance of finding your mentors, your elders, your sponsors, your champions that will come up to bat for you and will be there for you and help you in your journey. And I think that's something important in terms of networking spaces like today, is that, you know, find other folks who have those connections for you and can build you up, whether that's inside the workplace or outside. So we've kind of touched a little bit about the nonprofit sector and the arts sector. Those are two sectors that we know queer, two-spirit, trans folks are often in. And because we have found those to be more welcoming spaces, they're not perfect, but many of us find our careers in those spaces. But obviously, we are trying to do the work so that there is space in other industries as well, like our lovely host, Norton Rose Fulbright. And I can't come to Calgary without talking about the energy sector, to be quite honest. I'm gonna go over to Gregory. So working in the energy sector, you know, what challenges do you see that might be unique or not unique for the sector for uncovering gender expression, gender identity, and sexual orientation? And are there ways where you notice workers are really hiding parts of their identity?
Sure, absolutely. So I think over the last, I don't know, maybe 5 to 10 years, what I've really noticed is performative safety within the energy sector, where they'll say all the right things, they'll put the flag up, they'll say we have this ERG support group for you, but that's as far as it goes. And it's really based around their comfort and not my safety. And I've had very, very pointed conversations with leaders that have rubbed them the wrong way and maybe labeled me as the problem, not the solution. And I think that that's been quite frustrating, especially over the last year. I think in particular is that all this performative action is not backed by anything real. That'll go to put my safety first rather than their comfort first. It's nice for, I do consulting work in this space, but it's nice for you to say that you're going to do these things, but then not have any mechanism to be able to be accountable for it. So when you do not meet the standard that you say you have, and somebody like me or somebody in the organization brings it up as you did not meet this standard, it usually falls on deaf ears. And I find that really frustrating. Because I can only speak from my own experience, but I think that's what a lot of conservatively founded industries are really doing in terms of this DE&I, is flying the flag, marching the parade, doing all the things, but it stops at that performative action that they can benefit from. And I think this is dying. So can I have your? So I get tired of looking at that, understanding that a CG scratch below the surface, it is only that at a lot of places. And I don't want to look at it from a cynical point of view, but my experience has reaffirmed that over and over, where even last year, and I'll tell a story here, like I was consulting with a construction organization that I had reservations around consulting with, and I set a lot of boundaries at the start, saying this, these are my boundaries, this is what's okay, this is what's not, and the director of HR didn't like what I was doing as a cis straight woman. And she did her smiley HR backstabbing, and I could see it. I was feeling it. I was experiencing it. And when I brought it up, of course, it's very hard to make the director of HR accountable for HR related issues. And of course, nothing was done about it. And of course, the controller and the GM supported the director of HR, despite the fact that they brought me in to identify some of these issues. So, it is difficult. Maybe it's just me, maybe I'm dying. Yeah, I think we're 2 for 2. I find it hard. But I think it is stories that we tell. But now those stories need to lead into action that is determined by us. What action do we want to see? That probably makes your organizations uncomfortable to do. But what they get is somebody like me, somebody like you standing beside them, guiding where that needs to go. And that should be the biggest gift these organizations can get from people like us, is that allyship in creating that solution. And that we can also guide where it makes the organization less afraid of doing the things that hold them to account for the things that they say. So I think there's a lot of opportunity. And I mean, yes, it's frustrating. Yes, I get angry sometimes, but it's because I care and I want to see that change happen, that I work in more conservative industries like energy and technology. It's not because I'm like, oh, this will be easy. Because it's not. But one of my mentors and I said, those things that are worth pursuing are often not easy. So I think that that's really where a lot of my, while this is hard, I see that this is possible. This better future is possible. And it's that hope that we get to grasp that future as our reality that makes it worth it in these more conservative spaces.
So I'm hearing the importance of the actions that the organization needs to take that are concrete, that are actionable. You're getting claps online. And that it's not just tokenistic, and I think that goes to the importance of policies, procedures, but also it's about the interactions that we have, and you know, even if we are going into a space doing diversity, equity, inclusion work, or engaging with the RIG, that doesn't mean that everybody we're talking to is going to be fully present with us, is going to be fully active with us, and at times that might feel like undermining and you know, make us question why did we uncover in the first place.
I just have one thing. You know, the one thing I always say in this space is not about us without us. You know, and I know a lot of people have heard that before, but it's unbelievable how many people who don't represent the communities or have that understanding of you know, this DE&I work, think that they've been to a conference and know all the solutions to all the problems we're all having. But then that recycles kind of like this colonial approach to you know, the problems that we see. No, like not about us without us, and because then we get to create that one size fits one solution that you didn't learn at a conference that might have worked for somebody else that will likely not work for you.
So I think that leads well into the importance of community organizations and you know, organizations like ours and Calgary Pride and the role that we play. So Brit, I'm going to go over to you. In what role do you see community organizations within the community playing so that people can uncover at work, you know, and are there ways that you've seen Calgary Pride play that role explicitly?
Thank you so much. Yeah, just echo Gregory's sentiments about performativity, especially when all the emails come in June, right before the Pride Parade. People only want to help or be involved right in that moment. So definitely echo those frustrations that you elaborated on. But I definitely think community organizations can be a positive force for other organizations, and I think a lot of organizations, because we're smaller, more grassroots, we can be more responsive to issues. We can be more accountable to ourselves, and we can try things that might go against the status quo to make the organization better for everyone involved. So just as a recent example, our organization has eliminated our hierarchy. So there's no director. We all sit at one level. We all share accountability. We're all in charge of our various areas, but everything's very collaborative. And that was kind of an immediate response to some issues that the organization was having. So because we are smaller, more grassroots, we can be responsive to the ever-shifting needs of the community. And that's the biggest thing, is things can't be stagnant. I know for a lot of organizations, change is scary, but you know, an initiative needs to happen and things need to move forward. It's about being responsive, but also not rushing. You know, anytime there's like a major social issue that's in the news, I think a lot of organizations are rushing. They're rushing to try and solve the problem internally, not doing the proper research, not meeting with consultants, not actually talking to employees, but just putting in a policy and procedure that's really not that helpful. Just, it's a check. It's a check. You know, putting in pronouns in our email signatures, that's great. It does build a more inclusive environment, but that's not just a check and you're done. You know, we've made our space safer to us LGBTQ communities, because that's not it. That is one tiny facet of building an overall culture within the organization that I think is really important. So you know, my hope is that bigger organizations can kind of learn that responsiveness and understanding that things need to change. as the community changes as well, so. In terms of Calgary Pride, I've echoed my frustrations because, yeah, as an organization, we host the Pride Parade and Festival. A lot of organizations want to get involved. They want to march in the parade, send the check, and that's all they do. And that's all they really want to engage with. You know, we obviously have organizations who are much more willing to participate in the year-round thing, but it can be frustrating as someone working in this organization, have people approach you and say, hey, we want to host a DEI workshop. And I say, okay, great, here's our fee structure, and it's crickets. A lot of organizations do not want to pay community groups or organizations for this work. Please do not ask marginalized people to do work for free. We need to be paid. We're very small. We have extremely limited capacity. 3 staff plan a parade for 100,000 people. That's the biggest thing. But yeah, I think in terms of where we're playing a role, we are kind of at the forefront of any really social issue with the community, because we're kind of like the first result. We're always speaking to media. Organizations always come to us with questions. Of course, with the increased vitriol around trans and folks and the drag community, our own programming has been so disrupted, and organizations are silent. Like, where are all our supporters? It's all community groups and local advocates that are helping us. It's not businesses. So again, I think that looking beyond the month, the week of what we're supposed to be celebrating, Pride, Black History Month, Women's History Month, all that stuff, it needs to be a year-round engagement, ongoing, building a holistic relationship that's beneficial for everyone and not extractive. Don't try to take things from community. And yeah, so I kind of went on a little bit of a rant there. It's been a hard few months at Pride, just with everything going on with our drag shows. So if you want to come to one of our shows, Reading with Royalty, we encourage you folks to please register and come. Coming out and supporting, it means so much, and that's more valuable than, like, you know, a monetary donation during June, right? So that'll pass it back.
So I think one of the things that I'm hearing and thinking about from this is how continuous engagement with the community changes the workplace for the people who are within that organization, but also outside of that organization. And if we're not seeing our organizations, our workplaces step up and work with community, especially during this time right now, we're not going to want to show those pieces of ourselves at work. We're not going to want to bring those full parts of ourselves forward. And so we have to be doing that work around the year. So I want to ask you so many more questions, this little group, but I also know that there may be questions from the audience as well. And so I wanted to open it up in case there's anybody from the audience who would like to ask a question. One of the things that I would like to put as a ground rule, however, is that disclosure is a one-way street. And that's something that we believe very strongly at Work Canada, is that these are wonderful professionals who are here to share their stories, to show their knowledge, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're sharing their personal stories unless they want to. So if you can keep those questions professional, and also if there's any that come up online, if they can just be thrown in the chat. I'll repeat them so that folks online can hear the question as well. Is there anybody who would like to start us off, or I'll ask the question if not? Okay, well, I'm going to ask a question then. So we promote in coverings so that people can feel a sense of belonging at work. And that sense of belonging is something that you don't understand how powerful it is, how impactful it is, until you feel it, until you're in community, until you're in space where you feel that you're able to show yourself and show those pieces of yourself. And research has actually shown that the opposite of belonging is fitting in. And part of the reason for that is because fitting in is this idea that we're going to change parts of ourselves to be part of the company culture. So this idea of being a cultural fit for the organization instead of a cultural add. So I'm wondering, how do we move workplaces from a space of fitting in to a space of belonging? Whoever wants to go first.
So I think one of the interesting things that if we talk about the outcomes, what happens when you fit in versus when you belong is the difference of feeling dignity. And I think that is when we talk about if the environment allows me to feel belonging, then I have the opportunity to have dignity based on my education, based on my expertise, based on all of these other things that create that sense, that only reinforce that sense of belonging. I think fitting in robs people of that dignity. And because then you don't even get to celebrate the basic things that you are or that you bring, and then actually inhibits your ability to do your job because you're not going to be willing to give that extra effort or go dig deep when an organization requires you to fit in rather than create an environment of belonging. So I think that there's a huge difference between outcomes, what happens when an organization does the work to create that environment of belonging versus creates a culture that requires you to fit in.
Yeah, I think where I work right now with Calgary Arts Development, before I started working there, I was working with the Calgary Public Library and helping them with their new central location. I think when I first started with Calgary Public Library, it was challenging because it was they were just in the middle of this transition to opening, I guess, bringing in more Indigenous content, more diverse content in their collections, and even when it came to the having the reading with royalty was a really big deal. And but I feel like when I was there and being able to work with everyone individually and talk to them, I feel like my presence, along with the presence of other LGBTQ people that were working with me, all of us together, I think we had an influence over our co-workers and then management and different directors, and taking more risk. And for them, it's a big risk. For us, it was like, why, this is so minor. And being able to shape the workplace into a place where, where you're shaping it around you and around what you need and what your community needs. I find that when it comes to Indigenous issues and Indigenous culture, everywhere I go, everywhere I've worked, I've established an Indigenous center where people can learn more about treaties of Indigenous people, and that never existed there before. And along with that, I end up talking more about being Awawaki, being transgender. And slowly just kind of, you know, building on that and building on their understanding and awareness. And it's not always successful. It's, you know, there's a lot of resistance, but, you know, they hired me, so I'm there. You hired me. And so I think it can be scary to just to be bold and to demand, but you know, otherwise, I think it was someone said you could just end up being a token person there who was really just hired to either fit in or, you know, be quiet.
I'll just add some very minor things, because I think that was the level that really did all. For me, I think a place that's belonging is a place where they'll meet you where you're at and take an individual approach. I think when organizations are making policies and procedures, it's kind of this monolithic thing applying to everyone in the community, which is great to offer those policies, but I think it's also important to speak to individuals and see what they need and see where they're at to feel like they belong. And I think everyone's different. It's just important to take that individual approach.
Thank you so much. So we have a question from the internet. How?
The internet.
Yeah, the internet asks, thank you, Aaron, who asks, how do you handle uncovering in a workplace where you're the sole LGBTQ2SIA+ person in fear of falling into tokenism within the workplace? Who would like to take that question? And I can repeat it. So how would you handle uncovering in a workplace where you're the sole LGBTQIA+ person? It's all good. We have sun coming in and impacting the video. Where you're the sole LGBTQIA+ person in fear of falling into tokenism within the workplace.
Carefully. But I think it goes beyond that too, and I think it's finding an ally within the organization that you can trust explicitly. And I think because, you know, in my MBA work, I took a real interest in how teams can avoid tokenism and what is that kind of perfect scenario. And it's not just 2 people, it's actually 3 people that is that magic number. And it can be not specific to you know, to being, you know, 3 LGBT people, but it could be you and 2 other allies that represent that voice, that creates what research calls an empowered group. And that empowered group actually has influence. It has, you know, when 3 people ask for something, it often gets done way quicker than 2. And they call 2 an isolated team. Because it would be like me and Sable talking about something. Well, that's nice, but I think it's really important to understand what kind of protection mechanisms you can create for yourself, and 3 is that magic number.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like in every place I've worked, I've had allies, not necessarily other transgender people or other Indigenous people, but it's usually the allies or non-Indigenous cisgender people who have stood by me and really want to make the workplace better. And so we make a team, and so I feel, yeah, I completely agree.
Thanks. This is a hard question for me to answer. I have an art degree and have worked in arts, and there's a lot of folks in our community who are in arts. So I don't think I've ever been the only queer person in a job or at a party even. But But I did want to have an interaction with the professor in my MFA. I'd been making work for a year, and kind of one day he came to him, he was my preceptor, and talked about my queer lens of the work, and he was really taken aback because I hadn't talked about that before, and he said, well, I don't see any queerness in this work. So that moment kind of made me just like retreat back into my shell of who I was for the rest of my program. Unfortunately, because it's just like comments like that where you're like, okay, that's why I didn't say anything.
Yeah, no kidding.
But I think that, you know, I've been very, very fortunate in my position to always be around people. But again, like finding allies is really important. And you know, usually allies, they'll be vocal, so you can kind of identify folks who might be supportive of you. So
Yeah, the only thing that I would add to that, and there's many appreciations of the insights online, is the parents of 2S LGBTQIA plus kids are a major resource for future queer and trans folks in the workplace. Increasingly, we're seeing more and more parents who are stepping up, who are doing the work, and who will be that ally for you. They won't be perfect, of course. They'll make mistakes. They might make mistakes, but they're here. So we are starting to have some questions from the audience. So I'll go here and then here.
I'm Kelly. I'm a legal assistant here at NRF, and I just actually wanted to speak to kind of the opposite of what Brit said, which is really unfortunate. But my thought was, don't assume that you're the only person that is in absolutely every single one of those categories. It may be somebody who's, you know, who is evolving, or who is, you know, who is considering who they are, what they are, or it may be someone who is also covering and also waiting for the opportunity to reveal that about themselves. But all of that aside, like Sable said, you may end up with, you know, allies completely outside of any of sort of that diversity spectrum if you do develop that comfort level in general with them, and sort of be available even to start some of those conversations or answer some of those conversations. A perfect example, when Preston sent out the invitation for this event, one of my colleagues messaged me and said, so I should probably know this, but what are the I and the A for again? And I'm not gonna, I'll leave him nameless, but he's a good friend of mine. But you know, I feel I'm glad that I am visible in that sense, that I can sort of answer that question about him. And then the next time he sees that, or next time he knows someone who identifies as one of those things, then be that much further ahead in supporting him.
Thank you for that. So to summarize for those online, there was a comment in regards to don't assume that you're the only one. There might be other people who are covering, who are not showing themselves in the workplace, and you never know who might be there and as well. Is that good?
Yeah, exactly. And or just plain supportive, even if they don't, you know, even if they're not covering, you just may not be aware of how supportive they've been.
Yeah, and there might be people who are supportive even though you don't know.
I'm curious to have a conversation about the difference between, I'll call it identity and expression. So I think the idea of fitting in, we often look to the issues of labels or descriptions. I am a cisgender white male, I identify as gay, I use he him pronouns. Those are kind of labels that I use. But when it comes to my expression and how I act with inside, I think that there's a lot more masking that goes on where we try to fit what other people feel comfortable with in terms of how we act, how we speak, and how we dress according to those identities to make people feel comfortable. So I'm curious from a panel's perspective, how we can move this conversation even further forward about making safe space for people's expression of how they as individuals want to fit into community, and how community might be better at making, like really embracing that rather than just kind of making space for them. Does that make sense?
Definitely does. And apparently people can hear you online already, so I don't need to repeat the meeting. So who would like to start us off?
I think that's a really interesting kind of dilemma, and I often look at what people expect out of those labels, you know, and they're usually tied to stereotypes that are not necessarily true. And I think it's really important that we authentically represent ourselves. That might include the stereotype, but then also, you know, that also might not. And I don't think that's our job to like say, oh, this is gay behavior, this is not gay behavior, you know, and I think the more people experience of our community, and I think, you know, the Pride Parade is a great example. Last year, there were so many people there that I hadn't seen before that get to experience a community that might break down those stereotypes in a way that allows them to widen their vision on what being a member of this community is. And I think Calgary in particular is fairly good at that because of the representation in the Pride Parade that is not what you would typically associate, you know, with boys in underwear dance on floats. So I mean, I think juxtaposing those two experiences, both are gay, both are examples of what the community has. And you can make it whatever you want it to be, unless you choose to guide what you expect as a stereotype through the stereotypes.
Yeah, I think in the places I've worked, I always find that I have so much more in common with the people that I'm working with than these things about you know, being Black. You know, we don't have that in common, but there's so many things that we have in common. Most of the people I work with, we all grew up in the city, and you know, we visit the same places. And I've always been able to connect with my coworkers in a lot of different ways. But yeah, there is kind of sometimes a pressure to fit in with, you know, with them. And I think a lot of them don't really express themselves in like, we'll say, spiritually. It's not something that a lot of people are used to expressing in the workplace. So I bring my cousin here to my workplace to do an opening prayer or to do something, and that's really, I can tell that for most of them, they're really fascinated, or they're but sometimes people are really uncomfortable. Like they're really uncomfortable with it. But I feel like the more that we do it, the more we sort of push those boundaries. I think the more we're helping them, and I'm not necessarily trying to help them, but I'm helping them to be able to express themselves more.
So when I think about this question, trying to maybe cover parts of your expression versus identity, I think about the moment you kind of cross that threshold at work, your pressure to hide parts of yourself and be quote unquote professional. I don't know who set the metrics for professionalism hundreds of years ago. But you know, there has been shifts. You know, I think there's, for example, like major loosening of like what folks can wear at work, which I think has a huge impact on your expression and your identity. But I think that there is this pressure to become a whole other person when you walk through the door of your job, which is, I mean, I don't want to say it kind of sucks, but we're here 8 hours a day during the day, in the daylight, and we have to hide parts of who we are, and we can't express who we are. That's really unfortunate. So I'm hoping things can continue to shift, but, you know, I don't have the answer to that. There's things I find about myself at work, and we all do, so I think we all have to work together and figure out how we can all express ourselves more at work.
So I want to keep this conversation going, but I also want to do it over drinks, whether that's alcoholic or not. And food, we have plenty of food. Unfortunately not for the people online, but one comment.
They can watch us eat.
One comment that came from online was that this is very vulnerable and valuable. And so I want to thank all of you for your contributions today. And just to close us off, what is one short thing that you hope people take away today? And maybe we'll start from this end.
Yeah, building workplaces that meet the individual where they are, and not treating communities like a monolith, taking a more individual approach.
I think, yeah, being brave and being able to be vulnerable and open yourself up to more people in the workplace. For me, I found, especially at Calgary Arts Development, I feel really lucky that when I first started working there, I didn't feel that comfortable with people, but it's been a really long process where I kind of look at them as like my work family, and that took time to develop.
Don't mistake people's frustration and anger towards you as a direct, product of what you did. It's our frustration with the structures that prevent us from being present like we see others enjoy in the same space. My anger, my frustration sometimes is proof that I care and I wanted to change. And sometimes talking about it in ways that cover the true hurt that we might have experienced in this place, don't allow people to get the message of what impacts their actions might have towards people like us. And I think that that's really key is, I'm here because I want to be and I choose to be. I'm also here because I believe that we can do better. And sometimes when I talk about my own trauma, it doesn't come out perfectly. So give everyone the space to have it be a little raw and rough. But in the end, then you get my authentic expression of what I'm trying to communicate.
A round of applause for the panel. Thank you so much to all of you. I'm going to pass it off to our MC to bring us to a close.
Perfect, thanks, Jane. Wow, and the ball would go up. 37 stories high, that would be great. What a good, rich conversation. Some things that really stuck out to me, for those that don't know or can't tell how I look, I'm in my 50s. I covered who I was for over 30 years of my life. And when I started working at the organization I work at now, it was the first place that I went to that I decided, regardless of how I was going to be treated, regardless of what was going to happen, I was tired and exhausted and hiding who I was. And so I came out fully on day one. I was fortunate. I had an organization that supported me. I had a team that supported me. And it was good. I've been with this organization 17 years. for 10 years. It was at a pride parade with our organization that I found out that not everybody in our organization had the same experience as me. And that spurred me on to starting our ERG at Shaw, working with Pride at Work Canada for our organization to get better. And I think sometimes we forget as organizations, we think, oh, we want our people to be able to uncover. We want to create these spaces. But why do we need to do that? Beyond people feeling like they belong, the emotional tax that somebody has to go through of hiding or covering parts of them. I'm not going to be a great employee doing amazing things if I'm so worried about what I'm wearing, how I'm showing up. Do I sound gay? What's going to happen? Am I going to get that career opportunity? We need to be more aware of that impact on our people. Some great things today. Some things that stood out to me. Uncovering is a gift. I loved that. Uncovering for some is a privilege. It's not something that everybody has that privilege. It's not always safe for us to come out. Really important as organizations, if I've come out to you, don't necessarily out me to somebody else in the organization before I have that relationship to feel safe to do that. Be aware of that. I love that not about us without us. And if you're alone, find your support in your community. And us as organizations have to be better at not just doing performative actions. Before you put up that pride flag, before you go and say, hey, I want to be in the Calgary Pride Parade, what are you doing for your queer folks in your organization? And if you're not doing anything, you have no right to be in the parade. You have no right to throw that flag up. You have no right to change your logo. And if you're wanting to do stuff in that space, I Work Canada, they can help you get there. Really, they really can. Make sure we're not doing just those checkbox activities. Please, as organizations, if we are asking marginalized communities or underestimated individuals to do stuff, pay them. Don't only talk about it during a particular day, month, or event. We can be talking about these things all year round. We exist beyond Pride Month, beyond certain days.
Except Thursday.
Except-
Oh, today's Thursday. No, right.
Yeah, so those are just some of the big things sticking out to me. So thank you very much, everyone, for being here. We'd like to close today with passing it to Elder Divine Thunder for some elders.
So I'd like to sing a song. It's one of our sacred Sundance songs. So this song contains 3 dreams, and the words to it are Natusi. So the sun represents the creator to us. Natusi Kimogit, that means like have pity on me, take care of me. Kimogit, that's back to be, back to be. That means I'm gonna have a new life. And statistically, that means it's meant to be like that. And that's like every day we're having a new day to live life, and we get awareness and knowledge each day. And so with that, we're changing and we're growing. And this is one of the first songs that I learned as a fun dancer, because I was changing my life. I was lost in that alcoholism. Being in the residential school, I was told that there, in the Bible, that are gonna, that gets burned in hell for being a gay person, and so no matter as a child, if I try to be good, I'm still gonna burn in hell because I'm gay, that's what this is saying. But as I realized as I grew older, it's not even one of the 10 commandments, it's, within my native culture, there's no such thing as hell or the devil. And so that's where I really went back to my native culture to, to really learn about that. But I still acknowledge Jesus and Holy Mary because that's who I prayed to and directed me to the Pearson Sundance. So, and my drum here has right here is the line here. This is the Milky Way. In Blackfoot we call it Makoyoksuku, the Wolf Trail. And this is where we travel from the spiritual world to the physical world. And we're all brothers and sisters, and all the races of people in the world. And the sun is red for spirituality. Native people, they're called the red people, we're very spiritual. And there's the black people, they're very physical. And these are the things that we all have, unless we're alien or somebody's alien. But okay, so we're physical. The black people are very athletic, very good dancers, and then native people are spiritual, and then the Oriental people are emotional. They know how to control their emotions through yoga, meditation, and then the Caucasian that's mental, very wise, technology and stuff like that. But we are all made out of that, and so we have to balance ourselves. If we see ourselves lacking in one area, then we try to work in that area to make ourselves more balanced. Okay? And so Creator is creating all of the people in the world. So that's what my job here represents. And these are just some of the dreams that I've had and that I just wrote them here. So there was an elder recently, we had a conference with the elders, and they were saying that there's this one lady, Barbara Sculpture, saying that an old man was telling her one of her relatives that if a person is born as a twin, or if they're born as a Awawaki, or Nihas, when they grow older, if they choose to be spiritual, they'll be very powerful. And so with that, I find that's very true. My great grandfather, he was a medicine man. He was a twin. And one thing that he always prayed for is for long life. And my grandfather, obviously, he prayed for his kids. He lived over 100 years old. He lived to be about 104. And right now, the blood reserves, she's still alive. Me we so fat. That was his need. And that doctor said, I really love my uncle and my aunt. She really helped me a lot as a child. And right now, he's 103 years old. He's still alive on earth. So these are things that we are grateful for. We all have these abilities and for spirituality to have compassion for one another. And sometimes when we are, making fun of that people that are gay or different from us, we don't know who are hurting in that group, because there could be somebody that as a child or a family member that's that way. So you're hurting them, but you don't want to say anything. So we from the heart to when you I guess how you are with other people, how you talk with other people, and so I'll just share this song right now. With Blackfoot, we all sit down because Rosie Day Ryder, we asked her a question to one of our elders, and her dad was Larry Cohn was one of our elders, and her father. He said the Blackfoot, we sit on the ground when we pray. We don't stand up when we pray, that because we're close to Mother Earth. We're from Mother Earth. And when I share my knowledge of that, we always refer to that elder that told us this information. Stuff wasn't written down, but it just makes respect for that person. And when we pray, we call those ancestors to hear prayers and that. So numerology is very sacred too. It's part of our ceremonies and with the Blackfoot, the number 4 is very sacred. So these songs I sing them, you have to sing them like 4 times. And there's a legend there where this man, his name was Scarface, he went to the home of the son and he came back with 4 gifts. And we used to use the number 3, but now we use the number 4, the Blackfoot. And in the morning, when you see the morning star, there's another little star that comes up below on this side. That's Scarface, but his name was changed into mistaken morning star. But it's a long story. So, but there's many stories in our culture to share that. So I have my sweat lodge and I invite people from Calgary or whoever to come down and we share the elders to come and talk to the people that we got to.
Awesome. Thank you so very, very much.
Oh, the other thing I wanted to share too, that's very important.
Yes.
You know, when elders pray, they pray for God. And so when you're done, you always go like this to your heart. That means you take in the prayer. Like we say, hi, that's in Blackfoot. Priest will say hi, hi. And in church, they'll say amen.
Thank you very much. All right, I think we're at the end of our evening. So we'll close. For those of you that are here, we have some food and beverage around the corner. Bathrooms are down there if you need them. Thank you so much. For those online, I'm sorry, we'll tell you about the food maybe later if you ask us. It looks like it's going to be great. So thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah.
Part of this. We'll be back and we're planning a big event here in Calgary in November, so we'll be in touch with everybody about it. So,
Right on.